This is Ray Ford with SBIA, and we welcome you to our first Q&A session and thank our presenters for the great presentations. It's our pleasure to welcome to the Q&A panel Dr. David Skanchy. As a reminder, real-time questions to presenters can only be accommodated by those registered and logged into Adobe Connect application. Please register to gain access. We'll answer questions relevant to the current presentation in this session. If you have questions you would like to be considered for inclusion in the April 9th Drug Master File and Drug Substance Question and Answer webinar following the March 3 to 4, 2021 workshop, please send them to dmfworkshop2021 at fda.hhs.gov. Please send before March 19th. Please also register for the webinar at fda.gov/CDER-SBIA. If you haven't had a chance to enter your questions into the Q&A chat pod, please do so now. Looks like we have a few questions coming in as we speak, and the first question will be directed to Dr. Skoda. In an Amda application, which module or section should toxicological studies for impurities be included?
So for any toxicological data that is submitted in the application, in the referencing application, so we're assuming here that the drug substance information is submitted in the referencing application and there is no drug master file. We recommend that all drug substance impurity and pharmacological toxicological information be submitted with the discussion of the drug substance impurities, just as it is with the drug master file. This allows us to helps us to find the information much more readily in our review of the timely consult and early IR stage.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skoda. Could you please explain again the difference between the DMF evaluation before ANDA submission and the one after ANDA submission? Are they different evaluations, and are these documents different?
Sure. So the evaluation that occurs prior to the ANDA submission is the completeness assessment. This is like the filing review for an application. It's not a scientific review. In the completeness assessment, we're checking to make sure that everything we need to complete our scientific review later has been submitted. More information on this can be found in the Completeness Assessment Guidance for Industry or in the presentation by Jayani later this morning. For the timely consult and early IR, timely consult and early information request review, we're completing an early review of some specific scientific information. At this stage, we focus on things that we know will slow down our assessment if it is found too late in the review cycle. These include farm tox data on impurities, facility information, and starting material designation. And this is an early check on these things before we start our full scientific review. And the purpose of this is so that we can consult out any necessary information to facilitate our full scientific review process later. More information on this is available in Jayani's talk later this morning. Actually, I think I misspoke earlier. The completeness assessment information is available in the poster presentation that's posted on our workshop poster page. And the TCIR information is available in Jayani's talk later this morning.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is also directed to Dr. Skoda. Could you please clarify better when an amendment may be considered as unsolicited? You recommended against sending unsolicited amendments to the DMF. How does one DMF holder know that the ANDA is about to be approved so that they can hold on to the amendment until later?
Thanks for that question. So an unsolicited amendment is one for which it's not a result of a letter that we have sent to solicit information from a firm. So anything that, a change that is made, that is not a result of a letter that we have requested. I want to clarify that we're not recommending against submitting unsolicited amendments. We're just encouraging DMF holders to speak with their ANDA applicants so that they're informed of the ANDA or NDA review timeline. Timing changes to your DMF and submitting unsolicited amendments can affect the review timeline. And so we're just encouraging you to communicate with all of your referencing applicants along the process of the review so that you are aware of the timelines. Otherwise, the DMF holder is not aware of the referencing applicant's timelines. And by communicating throughout the process, you'll be better informed and can make your submission decisions with more information in hand.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. When will Form 3938 be implemented?
Form 3938 will be implemented sometimes this year.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. The question concerns whether an agent appointment letter is mandatory for the secondary DMF.
First of all, there is no regulatory requirement to appoint an agent for a DMF. Second, each DMF is taken into consideration separate. So if the holder doesn't want to appoint an agent for a secondary DMF, it's up to the holder. For example, if the DMF, primary DMF has an agent, then that's treated as an agent appointed for that particular DMF. If the secondary DMF, there's no agent appointed, then that is taken into consideration as no agent appointed. The holder will be handling all communications with the FDA on behalf of the DMF.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. Aren't all the DMF submissions now e-submissions? Will we still get notifications in the regular mail?
Good question. Type 2, Type 4, Type 5 need to be submitted in electronic submission gateway in eCTD format. There is no requirement for Type 3 DMF to be submitted in eCTD, but the holders of Type 3 DMF are welcome to submit in eCTD format. The Type 3 DMF, we still accept the paper submission in 2 copies. But the Type 3 DMF holders also have an option to submit via electronic submission gateway in eCTD or in non-eCTD via NextGen portal as well.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. If a drug substance DMF is not for generic, does this information still apply?
Yeah, so the focus of this workshop is primarily for generics. However, a lot of the information that is being presented, for example, in Vathsala's talk, that general information about a drug master file, that's going to apply regardless of which type of application, NDA or ANDA, is referencing it. Some of the timeline specific things that Erin talked about, is GDUFA specific. So those are just going to apply to ANDAs. Features like completeness assessment, payment of DMF fees, TCIR, those are all GDUFA specific things. A lot of the technical content in this workshop, from the posters and a lot of the technical scientific presentations, those would apply across the board, whether it's being referenced by an NDA or an ANDA. So it really does depend on the topic, but there is a lot in this workshop that is applicable to NDAs as well.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. Is the letter of access to the referenced ANDA also expected or recommended to be submitted 6 months before the ANDA is submitted?
Yeah, the letter of authorization needs to be in the drug master file when the application is actually submitted. That's when the LOA would be checked to make sure that it's present. So it does not need to be in the DMF earlier than application submission, although they usually are in there a little bit before an application comes in.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. If a DMF is not new, in other words, pre-GDUFA, and needs to be referenced, what is the process for getting it into the complete assessment?
Right. In order to have a drug master file undergo a completeness assessment, the only thing you have to do is pay the DMF user fee. Once that user fee is paid, that triggers the completeness assessment process. For DMFs that have supported applications in the past and have a review on file, they will receive what's called an administrative completeness assessment, which means they will automatically appear on the available for reference list about 2 weeks after payment is made.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have another question for Dr. Skanchy. Could DMF and ANDA be submitted at the same time instead of the recommended 6 months ahead?
Well, the answer to this question, could it be done? Yes, it could be done. The system would allow for it. The real question we want to answer here, though, is should it be done? And the answer to that question is absolutely not. The scenario described here would place the application at huge risk of being refused to receive. The reason being, if they came in at the same time, the amount of time allowed for the completeness assessment would only permit one cycle, meaning that if the DMF failed the completeness assessment, the application would automatically RTR at that point. So it would be a very risky proposition to follow this sort of a submission strategy.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have another question for Dr. Skanchy. Can you comment on an existing DMF that has not undergone a CA with respect to a PAS ANDA? I assume that that's a similar process and that the DMF holder should pay their user fee to start the CA process approximately 6 months before the supplemental ANDA submission. Is this correct?
Right. You should follow the same recommendation for a DMF being referenced in a prior approval supplement as you would for an original application. There is no filing review per se for most prior approval supplements. So if a fee is not paid and the DMF is not available for reference at the time the supplement comes in, we will simply hold review of the DMF supporting that supplement and then reach out to the holder and ask that they pay the fee so that we can do the completeness assessment.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've got a few more questions coming in. 1 second on my Google Doc. It's slowing down on just a tad. The next question is directed to Dr. Skoda. Why does scientific review start after the 60-day of the ANDA review clock?
The scientific review starts after 60 days because the first 60 days are devoted to various filing reviews. At day 60, the filing decision for the referencing application is made. And so full scientific review of a drug master file does not begin before the referencing application is filed, simply because at that point we're not sure that the application will be received and filed. And so we wait until after that filing decision is made to make sure that our process is more efficient and that we're not starting scientific review for a DMF that doesn't end up being referenced by an application that is filed.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skoda. Can you explain the policy for sending out first adequate and no further comments letters again?
Yes. So these letters are very similar in that they are both directed to the DMF holder. The first adequate letter is received and sent only one time for a specific drug master file. And this letter is received the first time that your drug master file becomes adequate. The no further comments letter will be received for each referencing application that is referencing a given drug master file. So once your referencing application is approved, you receive a no further comments letter to the DMF holder letting you know that status. So you can receive multiple no further comments letters for a given drug master file, but only a single first adequate letter for a drug master file.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skoda. What if we're not ready to respond to our first CR letter within 30 days of receipt? Can we submit a partial answer, or can we send it later than 30 days?
So the 30-day response time is our recommendation, and this recommendation is based on adhering to the ideal timelines that we showed in the presentation. You're not required to respond within 30 days, but we do strongly recommend it just to keep everything moving along the review pathway. If you are unable to respond in 30 days, we do not accept partial responses. So you would have to wait until you were able to fully respond to your complete response letter to submit your response amendment.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. Would a submission of an LOA be considered an administrative amendment?
Letter of authorization, when submitting via electronic submission gateway, I think the holders have the option to select original or amendment or annual report or letter of authorization. There is an option for them to select. So in that place, if they're submitting just the letter of authorization, they can select letter of authorization in the back end of the ECTD submission, and the cover letter should specify as a letter of authorization. In case if they are submitting an amendment to the letter of authorization, like for example, some information was incorrect, they are resubmitting. So either they can select amendment and notify in the cover letter why they are resubmitting the same LOA, or they can just choose letter of authorization in the back end and submit as a letter of authorization.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. Can we file administrative changes along with the annual report for DMF?
We strongly discourage the amendment to be submitted with the annual report. For a DMF, it's not an annual update with all those new changes made to the DMF is reported. For annual report, that's a specific. So any changes, any addition, change, or deletion of information made to the DMF should be reported to the FDA by submitting an amendment to that DMF. Not to be included, not to report the new changes in the annual report.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Ms. Selvam. Is the DMF acknowledgement letter, is it just sent out via regular mail and not electronic mail or email?
Currently, our process to send the DMF acknowledgement letter is via regular postal mail, not via email.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have another question from Ms. Selvam. Is it necessary to mention the ANDA product name on the LOA?
Good question. There is no need to enter the product name in the letter of authorization as long as the authorized party name is clearly indicated in it. But if the holder wants to indicate the product name, they can do so. But if they specify the product name for that particular authorized party, then if the same authorized party submit another application, then they may have to resubmit a letter of authorization again for that authorized party with that product name. If no product name is indicated, just the authorized party, then there is no need to resubmit the letter of authorization for the same authorized party if they are authorized to reference the DMF in support of their application.
Thanks for responding to that question. The next question is also directed to Ms. Selvam. Are we supposed to update the authorized party list 1.4.3 each time we issue a new LOA or only when we submit the annual report?
Good question. Actually, the current draft DMF guidance that is in place now request to indicate the list of current authorized parties in section 1.4.2 or 1 in ECTD submission. But currently, since it's a draft, it is not implemented yet. So you can submit the list of current authorized parties in the annual report at this point. Once a draft DMF guidance becomes final, then you may have to indicate the list of authorized parties in every submission, notify in the 1.4.1 section of ECTD.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've got another question for Ms. Selvam. What is the difference between DMF holder and DMF agent?
DMF holder who owns the DMF, DMF agent is the company appointed by the holder It's a contract between the holder and the agent. So the holder appoints an agent to act on behalf of them in communicating with the FDA, either on the or sending the correspondence, either administrative or technical. So it is between the contract between the holder and the agent. The agent doesn't own the DMF. DMF holder owns the DMF.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. Where does the list of amendments go in the annual report?
This is Vathsala Selvam. I can answer to this question. The annual report can be submitted along with the cover letter in section 1.1, where it can indicate the list of amendments submitted with the date in the last 12 months in the annual report. And list of current authorized parties in section 1.4.1.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. Does a DMF fee need to be paid when submitting in support of an IND?
Yes, a DMF fee does not need to be paid for an IND or an NDA because those are covered by the PDUFA program, and the DMF fee is specific to the GDUFA or the generic user fee program. So no fee for an IND or an NDA.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. Do annual submissions of stability data for the API need to be categorized as a DMF amendment?
Yes, updates to stability data should be submitted in a DMF amendment. If we find that information submitted in an annual report, we will categorize that submission as both an annual report and a quality stability amendment. So quality information must be in an amendment.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. For a Type 2 radiopharmaceutical API, does OPQ conduct a complete assessment?
So that depends on whether the radiopharmaceutical is categorized as a PET product. PET products are specifically excluded from GDUFA. So if it's a PET product, it would not be subject to a fee or a completeness assessment. A radiopharmaceutical that is not a PET product would follow the typical GDUFA pathway, and a fee payment and a CA for the DMF would be performed.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is also directed to Dr. Skanchy. Will there be any change in the goal date for an ANDA if an unsolicited DMF amendment is filed after 2 to 3 months of ANDA filing?
Right, so what we're talking about here is an unsolicited amendment to the DMF that comes in during the early part of the application timeline. And those are typically not a risk to extension of a goal date and would simply be rolled in to the current open DMF review cycle. It's really the unsolicited amendments that come in the last couple of months prior to the goal date that put an application at risk of a goal date extension.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question is directed to Dr. Skanchy. During a CA review, will a secondary DMF also be reviewed by FDA along with an API DMF for completeness?
Right. If there's a secondary DMF associated, the only thing that we check is that when we do the completeness assessment is to make sure that that secondary DMF has been filed with the agency. We do not actually go into the secondary DMF and look at any of the information there. Only a check to make sure that it has been filed with FDA.
Thank you for responding to that question. Looks like we have time for one more question, and the last question at this session will be directed to Dr. Skanchy. A DMF holder has a DMF with a CA status. Is there a way with a firm authorized party with an LOA to know if the DMF is in good standing? For example, that all DMF maintenance is okay with the annual reports being submitted on time.
Right. So authorized parties can receive status information on the drug master file. And all they need to do is direct an email to us at dmfogd@fda.hhs.gov, and we can provide up-to-date status information about the DMF that they are authorized to reference. We, of course, will check to make sure that you are an authorized party, so please make sure that your email contains the identifying information so that we can do that check. But yes, we can provide you status information if you are an authorized party.
Huge thank you to our panel for answering all the questions that came in. We'll now take